All right, so now that we know how to receive user input, what we can do is we can store that input in something called a variable. Just like in math, when you first started learning algebra, you learned that a variable can store information. It can store a specific number in terms of math. But in computer science, a variable can store something the computer can recall later. Think of a variable as a box. And in that box, like a shoe box, you can open it up and put something in it and then put it away and move it aside for later. And if you go back to that box, return and look inside of it, you still have something in that box. That's like a variable. You can store a value or something inside something called a variable. So let's say we've asked the user, we've prompted them and said, what is your name? And no matter what you type, it kind of just ends because we haven't instructed it to do anything after that. So what I can do is I can actually create a variable and store whatever the user types in so that way I can access it later on somewhere throughout the program. So what we're going to do is we're going to type something out in front of here. I'm going to type in let, like you're letting something be, and I'm going to name my variable, and I'm just going to name it name. Because what's actually being prompted, what is your name, whatever the user types in into this original prompt, if they type in Mr. Danza like we have been typing in, that then is stored later on in a variable called name later on. Now, whenever you're creating a variable, you have to type let out in front, and that helps you be able to name your variable and allows the computer to store it for later on. So if I run this right now, it says, what is your name? And I just type in Mr. Danza, right? And I click OK. What the computer has done is it has stored a variable called name and allows that to be replaced by Mr. Danza. So now check this out. An alert just allows something to show up on the screen. So if I now call an alert and I just type in name, remember that when I run this, it's going to prompt me, what is your name? It's going to store whatever I end up putting in there as name, and then later on we'll actually print it out in an alert. So let me show you in real time. What is your name? Mr. Danza. And then just prints out again, Mr. Danza, and shows me that I actually stored that. So later on, somewhere throughout the program, even if it's 1,000 lines later, if I refer to the variable called name, then it allows me to be able to access that. And I could have named this whatever I want. I just named this name. I could call it N. I could have called it something random that I would remember. But it's good to be specific when naming a variable. So I just said name. And that's how you would create a variable in JavaScript.